welcome. This is Ariane with Sociable Art, and today I'm going to show you how to paint a snow lady and snowman, or one or the other of those two. I'm going to start with the snow lady, and then I'll paint the snowman, so you can skip ahead if you're just painting the snowman. But you might want to watch this first one because I don't do as much with the snowman because I've already showed how to do a lot of like the background and everything in this first one. So if you're doing the snowman, you can watch this first one too. You can purchase paint kits at sociableart.com, and those come with paint and brushes and a printed canvas sheet. Or if you're local, you can get a pre-sketched 16 by 20. I have sketched my design on this canvas. You might not be able to see it in this video because it's pretty light. It's a pretty simple design, so you should be able to sketch it yourself, but feel free to go to sociableart.com to buy a paint-along kit, and you'll see all the other ones that are available too. I'm going to start out by painting the background, and I have chosen to do gray, so I'm doing mostly white with a little bit of black added to it. And you can choose different color backgrounds. You could choose a blue or a blue-gray, or really any color you want. It could be pink or orange like a sunset too. But I wanted to choose something that would contrast well against the white of the snowman, or snow lady in this case. And also, you want to keep in mind that you're going to do some snow in this background later, and you want to be able to have it show up. So I'm choosing a dark enough gray where the snowflakes will show up against that. And as I'm painting around this figure, I'm trying to use a very large brush because you want to use the biggest brush that you can for any particular area because you'll have less brush strokes and a more uniform background. But you just remember that you have two sides to your big brush. You have the big flat side for big areas, and then you have the skinny. You can turn it sideways and use the skinny side for doing right around the figure. And as you can see, I'm adding this gray, but I don't want to do it just one shade of gray all through the background. I like to have different variations in shade. So I started with a darker shade of gray, and then, I don't know if you noticed, I started just dipping into the white and adding the white in and just kind of blending it right there on the canvas. So I added straight white into that gray, and then I'm just blending it with the back and forth strokes. And I'm trying to keep it the darkest shade right next to the snow lady figure so that she will be contrasted well and show up better against the background. I don't want the white of the snow on her body to fade into the background. That's why I'm creating this darker shade right next to her. And then I'm trying to lighten the shade as it goes towards the sides of the canvas and the top. Also notice that with my snow lady, I chose to not do a perfect circle for her body and for her head. I wanted her to look like a hand-packed snowman where there were kind of imperfections in the circle. So it's a little uneven on my outline on purpose. And you can choose to do it either way. It also looks really good with a perfectly circular snow person. So just that's your choice. And I'm just going to start filling in this other side. Once again, doing my darkest shade of gray right next to the figure. And then as I move towards the outside and the top, I'll have more white. And I'm just adding it on the canvas and kind of blending the wet white into the wet gray. So you can just continue filling in around this figure. And yeah, the one thing I forgot to mention is, you know, when you come to where the arms are, and I've sketched them on, or if you have a printed canvas, you'll see the arms on there, and they're just little thin twigs. I always paint over a thin line rather than, you know, trying to paint around it, because it's a lot of work to paint around something like that. And then you can also see a lot of different brush strokes that you might not want to see around that if you're trying to paint around something. So I paint right over those thin kind of lines like the arms, because one of two things. Either you're still going to be able to see the pencil or the printed lines under the paint, and so you'll be able to see them clearly. And then when you go to paint the arms, it'll be easy. Or I'm sure that you can paint those back in yourself. I have faith in your ability that you can figure out how to paint the stick arms in without even having that guideline there. So it's best to just paint over them. So I'm going to continue to paint around this background and then up above the hat area. So I've mostly finished the background here, and you might find that you don't like seeing a lot of brush strokes. You don't like the unevenness of it, so you can always go back and do a second coat to really smooth things down. But I kind of like seeing a little bit of irregularities in the background and some brush strokes, but that's up to you. So if you want to, you can do a second coat once it dries. But now I'm going to add the snow on the figure. So that's mostly white, but there will be some areas of a little bit of gray just to show some shading. So I'm starting with the white, and I'm just adding white in this whole bottom circle. And there's going to be gray up here on the top because there's a little shadow here where that top snowball for the head sits on top of the lower snowball. So I added a little gray here. I'll just leave that for a second. And then I'm going to put white up here, and then I'll blend the two. So I'll have wet white up top, and I'll have the gray at the bottom, and a little bit of gray at the top where the hat brim makes a shadow. And then I'll just blend that wet white with the wet grays. But I don't want to pull it into the whole white and make the whole white area gray. So you see I'm just concentrating on the areas where the wet white and the wet gray touch, and I'm just brushing between the two of those areas so I don't spread that gray all through that circle. And here I've just sped it up so you can see me doing that. Okay, now that I've got both the top and the bottom circle of the snow lady filled in, and I've added the shading and I've blended it in. And again, on these areas, you might want to do a second coat to really make it look just three-dimensional. I've added definitely some variations in there of shades so that it looks like a hand-packed snow person. And you can see I added a little wave into the sky, like there's some wind back there. And I did that with my second coat of paint. but it's not necessary to do a second coat. That's just something I chose to do. It looked pretty good before that, but I just wanted to make it smoother. Also, I had some pencil lines that I needed to cover up. And I'm sorry for this angle that I have the canvas at, because it actually looks like the bottom circle is a little distorted. That's just the angle, the perspective that we're looking at it from. It's actually pretty circular. Now I'm starting to fill in the hat, and I have chosen to do my brim of my hat in a bright pink. You might not have that, especially if you purchased a paint at home kit. Sometimes they have pink in there and sometimes not, because you can easily mix pink by mixing red and white. So if you don't have pink, mix red and white. And if you have any troubles with mixing of colors, just look up a color chart online and it will show you how to easily mix like peach and purple and all different kinds of colors that you might be interested in having, aqua and teal, things like that. So decide in advance what colors you want in this brightly colored hat. You can do it any colors you want. You can do it in Christmas colors or pastels. I just wanted the hat to be really bright against the gray background, so I've picked some very bright colors. And they're a little unusual colors, so they might not be in your standard paint kit, but you can usually mix almost anything depending on the colors that you have. So I'm doing this bright pink under here, and I left a little white line around the brim because I want to put some multicolor, like little beads or something along there. So I'll just continue to fill that in, and then I'm going to fill in the stripes of my hat, and I might speed it up at some point to do that, because that's pretty self-explanatory. You're just going to fill in stripes with whatever color you want. You can paint over the petals of the flower, or you can just leave it white. That's up to you. The whole hat. I've made a red flower. You can do it whatever color you want. I've filled in the center first with kind of a white color because I want to put yellow on there, and I need to put the white first to make it really show up. And I'll let that dry. And I put some little beads around of different colors around the brim of the hat. And now it's time to do the features. And I know it's a little scary to put the black coal on there for eyes. But remember, if you mess anything up, you can just take a paper towel, wipe it off, and then put white back on there and cover it up, and then start again. So I'm going to do the eyes in black, and you can use the wooden end of your brush, but I think that might be a little bit too small for what I have in mind. So I'm going to use a brush to do a circle here of the black for the coal eye. And we're going to have a carrot nose. And then for this lady, I'm going to have some kind of like red berries for her mouth, kind of so it'll look like she has lipstick on. So I like to do my eyes kind of far apart. I think it makes the snow lady look a little cuter with far apart eyes. When you put them close together, they start to get mean looking somehow. So for the carrot nose, you want to use orange. If you don't have orange, just mix red and yellow. And it's mostly yellow with just a little red added in. And you can either make your nose straight, or you can make it a little bit, curvy. And I'm just going to start adding the orange on here. And after I fill in the whole, triangle for the nose, then I'm going to go over my brush strokes and kind of use my brush strokes to give the carrot some dimension by kind of running the brush strokes circular around the carrot. You'll see me do that in a minute. After I fill it in, you'll see me take my brush. See, I'm doing these curved brush strokes. Probably can't see it in the video, but it gives, you can see the brush strokes on the carrot and makes it look more like a real carrot. Okay, now we need to add the little berries for the mouth. And for this, I am going to use the wooden end of the brush and see if they'll be big enough. If they're not, I'll just go back and make them bigger. And I'm actually thinking that's probably a little small. But I'm going to go ahead and do all of them with the wooden end of my brush sticking into the red paint. And I'm just dotting those on, having to keep dipping back into the paint and adding them. If I find that they're too small, I'll just go back and make them a little bigger with my brush by circling the brush around. So that's what you see me doing here is I'm using the skinny brush to kind of circle those and make them just a little bigger. And the next thing you should be thinking about is what color buttons do you want on your snow lady? You can use any of the colors that you already used in your hat, and that will complement it. And I also like to do little dots on the buttons to make them look, you know, like they have holes in them like buttons do. I'm just touching up my flower a little bit. It needed a second coat to make it look more solid. Okay, once you decide what color buttons you want, you can put those on, and you're gonna want them to be kind of large. I probably could have even done them larger than I did, and it probably would have been really cute. I'm choosing kind of a lime green. I think that'll show up well, and I'm just gonna do, you know, however many buttons you think. It depends on how big you make them. You might want to put a couple coats of paint on for those buttons as well. Okay, so the next thing we have to do is, of course, we need to have some arms on our snow lady, or some twigs, branches. And you want to keep in mind, if you're doing this snow lady with another, you know, person, you know, or you're also making the snowman canvas, you want them to eventually be holding hands. So keep that in mind when you're adding the sticks, that you put the other canvas up to this one and you know exactly where to put the sticks so that it'll be holding the other snowman's hand. So I just used a dark gray, or you know, you can use black or dark gray, which would be black with a little white added to it. And I'm using my skinny brush to just create a branch. So you do the main branch, and it should be not, I mean, you can make it perfectly straight, and that would look cute too. I like to make mine look more like a real branch, which means that it would be slightly curved and irregular. So I made that one branch first, and then I added two little branches coming off that main branch that are supposed to be sort of little fingers. So mine just has three. Then I went back and added some dabs of white into that dark gray paint just to give it a little interest, make it look a little more three-dimensional. And now I'm going to decide where I want that other one to come out and make sure that it'll be touching the edge of the canvas so it can hold hands with the other snow person. So start with the main branch and then add some other branches coming off of that one that will look like fingers. So I did a curved line and then adding the other branches in. And then once we finish adding the branch arms, we just need to remember to add the snow into the background. And you can do that one of two ways. You can do it with the method where you're kind of flicking the paint onto the canvas by using a watered down white paint and then just loading your brush with that paint and then just kind of hitting it over the canvas, and it flicks it all over and you get lots of fine drops of snow, and it's a really nice look. However, I would definitely do it outside, not inside, and it has a tendency to kind of flick back and get on you as well. So I use the wooden end of the brush instead to add that. So now it's time to start the snowman. And I started by just already painting the background the gray. But I also wanted to have an area where the smoke is coming out of the pipe. So I did the background gray the same way I did with the snow lady. And if you didn't see that, you can go back and watch that at the beginning. But to add this area of smoke, what I have done is I have the wet gray paint, still wet in the background around this smoke area. And then I'm going to add the straight white where the smoke is going to be. And then it'll kind of blend in with that background gray as I'm filling in, so that it will look like smoke and not like just a shape here in the background. So I'm adding straight white where the smoke is, and I'm blending it into the wet gray background. And I'm kind of doing my brush strokes so that it makes it wavy and kind of look like it's, floating through the air. And once I fill in the whole thing, just for a finishing touch, if you really want it to look like it's fading into the background, you can clean your brush or take a clean dry brush and just run that brush right along that transition line between the gray background and the white smoke. So here I have a clean dry brush, run it along that line, and it will just even make it more smoky looking. So I'm going to speed up the video at this point just so I can fill in the rest of the background and fill in the circles of the snowman as I did in the first part of the video. Once you finish the background, then you can start filling in the hat, and that's pretty self-explanatory. Black hat with a red brim. And a green scarf. And I'll show you how to do the variations in color in the scarf in a moment. So to get the scarf to not just look like a big green blob, I had to add some lighter areas and then some darker areas. So to get the lighter highlighted areas on the scarf, you're going to want to add white to your green paint or a different brighter shade of green that's lighter. And I'm just going to add that on the top parts of the scarf. So this is the top knot, and I'm adding this lighter shade into that wet green so it'll blend as I'm adding it in because the paint's wet. And I'll do the same thing on these other parts of the scarf. So right along the top here, and I can just blend that into that wet green paint. And then the darker areas underneath the scarf, you can add a little black into your green paint, just a little bit, or another dark shade. Like you could add, if you add a little red into your green, that would work as well to get you the shadowed area. All of a sudden it'll start looking more three-dimensional when you have these contrasting values in here. So here we're going to put it along here so it looks like that one part of the scarf is definitely overlapping the other part. So I'm just going to keep on working on that, creating contrasting values so that the scarf looks like a real scarf. But here I'm just adding in the little fringe on the bottom of the scarf using the same shade of green. It's pretty easy. You just draw these little lines out coming from the bottom of the scarf. Okay, so now I'm going to fill in the corncob pipe, and I'm using the yellow with a little white added to it. And if you want to make it look three-dimensional, you could do the darker color on the sides, like an orangey yellow, by adding just a teeny bit of red to it. And you can even add a little texture on there, making some actual little corn kernels on there with a lighter shade. And don't forget to add the little stem of the pipe. Might need to do 2 coats on that to really make it show up. Next we'll be adding the features. And he will also have the carrot nose. So I'm adding that. His has a little curve on the end. And then there will be the dark coal eyes, and I'm going to do coal for the mouth as well, and he's going to have a little smirk. Okay, now it's time to add the arms to our snowman. So I'm going to bring the other canvas over. If you're doing 2, you want to make sure they're holding hands. So I'm just putting this one up to the other one to see where that branch needs to touch the other branch. And I'm just going to make a little mark with my black or dark gray paint on the edge here so I can see where those fingers need to touch. And then I'll use again the black paint or dark gray, and I'll make a main branch. Here's my main branch, and I like to do mine kind of curved like a real branch rather than a straight line, but you can do a straight line if you want. And then you can add 2 or 3 or 4 fingers, and the fingers are just branches coming off that main branch. And if you want, you can add some little dabs of white onto the branch to make it look a little bit more like a real branch. So I'll finish this one, and then I'll just go over and add a branch on the other side in the same way. Let's see how those two go together. Ah, very nice. They're holding hands. So check. So now I'm putting it back on the easel so I can add the snow. I don't want to forget to do that. So I'll be dipping the wooden end of my brush into the white paint and then dabbing that on the canvas. And one thing I like to say is I like the snowflakes to be kind of random. I don't like it to look like polka dotted, like they're perfectly spaced, but that's just my preference. I like to have them randomly spaced all over. And you want to make sure to put them on top of the snowman as well. You want to have some on the hat, some on the scarf, in my opinion, because it would be snowing on top of the snowman in front of him as well as just behind him. But again, that's your preference. If you only want them in the back, you can do that. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see what other kind of kits we have at sociableart.com, just go to the website and you can look through the shop there. And if you enjoyed this video, please press the thumbs up, like button, and subscribe to see more videos. Thanks again. Bye.